Welcome to Martini Time. Boy, is it Martini Time again? I think my life is a bookend by martinis with just a bunch of writing on Facebook in between. So I've got a bunch of new friends who like to comment. So I've been really busy today, and oh, that's good. And a friend of mine just left me some better gin that I've been drinking. And, I have something to say for having good gin. I've been buying the cheap stuff, $12 for a half gallon. It's made in a bathtub. But anyway, so the two topics today that have caught the attention of my fingers has been Al Franken and his resignation, and the baker's choice, which I titled this, which is in the Supreme Court. Should a baker have the right to refuse service to a gay couple? And so I've been working that out today, taking that through the ringer. And so let's talk about that, for instance. And you see, to me, it comes down to, it's a very deep question. I'm really curious to see how the Supreme Court is going to come down on this. Because if you have a bar or any kind of a public place, you can refuse service to anybody who has an objectionable behavior. They're drunk, they're disorderly, they don't wear any clothes, they've got no shoes. In other words, you have a right to reject behavior that disturbs your store. But then when it comes down to something that's not a behavior, do you have the right to not serve them? And of course, that goes into color and gender. And the swishy part here is sexual identity, which is a new identity in our culture. Let's face it. Watch Mad Men. And homosexuals in Mad Men, which is in the 60s, and Mad Men was about the 60s, which is kind of like the end of the 50s and all the decades before that, and the beginning of the age we're in now. So the 60s kind of like was where the end of the 50s met and the beginnings of the 70s met in there, So it was kind of like a intermediate zone. And at that time, gays were an illegal identity. So it was all undercover. And a big fear was that you would be discovered and arrested. But that's changed now. So suddenly gay identity is okay. Now if gay identity is okay, well then gay marriage. That's the next boundary, you see. And so now we're getting into the baker's choice. So it was against his religious belief that gay people should be married. So you see how this kind of like spills from one cup to the next, Or like once you pour this on the top of the pyramid, the water kind of like pours down. And so the problem we're in here is that if the Constitution upholds refusing service because of a religious belief, not for a behavior, but for a religious belief that somebody by their nature is objectionable, you have a conflict between our society, the value of the whole of society, and as a secular, pluralistic society, the value that holds our society together is equanimity. All human beings are treated equal in our society. That's what holds it together. If you take away that value, our society falls apart. You see. Then you get into a theocracy, perhaps, So then only moral behavior is accepted. And of course, that's the Al Franken problem. But we don't want to get in that. So we're kind of like digging into this, pulling this cotton ball apart here to find out what the seeds are in it. So then you get into absolute. All right, so now you got the conflict here, which the Supreme Court will have to decide. The value of a pluralistic society that is held together because of equanimity, or a value of a religious individual who is held together by exclusion. In other words, morality is a exclusive worldview. In other words, in morality, not everybody is not equal. Only the good people are equal. The bad people get out, you see. The sinners, you see. So you got the world divided into not sinner and sinner, or good and evil, you see. And this divides the world. So then if your belief is that gay people are sinners because, and this is where it all falls apart, for a gay person to be a sinner, and excluded from the fold, they have to be able to choose their gayness. If you can't choose, in other words, so it's not a behavior. You choose a behavior. So if the bar says, the baker says, you have to wear shoes to get a cake, change your behavior, put on a shoe. If you don't want to put on shoes, go to another store. I mean, that's the way it works. So you can have the right to exclude behaviors that disrupt your store. But being gay doesn't disrupt the store behavior. It disrupts your behavior. You see, it disrupts your worldview. So if the customer does not choose the reason for his being not served, then that opens up a can of beans that has no end. Because every religious belief there's infinite religious beliefs. So then, once that is constitutionally supported, where does that stop? I have a religious belief that blue-eyed people are evil, and I'm not going to serve them. You see. Or, God knows there are a lot of different religious beliefs, and then other religious beliefs, you see. So a religious belief is contrary to the belief of a secular, pluralistic society. Now, if we had a theocracy, it would be fine. Then everybody would be judged by what's in the Bible, or if you're a Muslim society, by what's in the Quran. And you'd have no problem then. Your particular, in other words, that would be enforceable by law, but it would kind of like make the society into a private club. Now, if the baker doesn't want to serve gays, his only recourse should be to have a membership bakery. And just Christians or straight people can come in and get served. You see. And so a lot of private clubs do that. You can refuse service to non-members, and you can declare that you have to be a certain way to be a member. But even that's is challenged all over the place. So anyway, this is a rather interesting decision the court is in, because it gets to a fundamental divide that is really not just about baker's choice. It's about whether values are absolute or relative. See, absolute values that are religious values, they are absolute. They don't change. God made them. That's the way things is for eternity. That's absolute values. But we live in a relative society. And relative means evolution. So we live in an evolving society versus a static society. Now, religion sees the world as a static world, unchanging values. It gives people certainty, stability, meaning, purpose. All of these are good things. Stabilizes you, anchors you. You know where you are. You know where everyone is. You're centered. You're righteous. You're sure, you see. But in a changing, evolving society, everything is wobbling. And there's uncertainty. There's dread. There's fear. You see. And so the baker's choice is an attempt to stick an absolute stake in society to stabilize this evolution of sexual identities and go back to prior to the particular stage we're in now, where your sexual identity is constitutionally protected. Is your sexual identity constitutionally protected or not? That's the question. If it's just a behavior, then it shouldn't be protected, because you can change your identity and come in and get the cake. You see. But if you can't change your identity, then you're being discriminated against. So it's all about what's an identity, you see. And God knows we're in a flux with that. Everybody's changing their fashion and their hair, their ears and beard. You know, we're in a cacophony of identities now. Everybody's changing identities. Look at me, you see. So anyway, this is a very interesting discussion in the Supreme Court. We'll see how it works out. Thanks for dropping in.